In this session, we're going to look at the overall structure of this particular program. We're going to start off the program by looking at the basics of iPhone development. We're then going to move on in the second session to look at the language Objective-C and get you up to speed with its syntax and the way we work with it. In the third session, we're going to start looking at the user interface and something called Cocoa Touch, where we're going to start using the more advanced controls and use some delegate methods and set properties and get properties. Next, we're going to move on and study navigation controllers, which is a way to control when we have more than one view in the application, which allows you to move backwards and forwards between different screens. We're then going to look at lists and data sources, which allows us to pull data in from external sources and display it in lists. And finally, we're going to look at simple data persistence, which allows us to store the data so when the application shuts down and restarts, the data is still there for us. The attendance for this module is absolutely mandatory. We're going to be taking electronic registers during the lab sessions, and if you miss more than 2 sessions, they'll be followed up with the registry team. So please make sure you turn up. If you miss a session, get in touch with us and get up to speed as quickly as possible. If you miss more than 1 session, you're going to really struggle with doing the assignment task at the end. When you are in the sessions, can you please make sure the member of staff scans your code to make sure that you are there and you're registered. To do the register, we're going to use QR codes. So the first thing you're going to have to do when you turn up to the first lab is go to the website goqr.me and generate a QR code based on your student ID number, which is the 7-digit number that appears on the front of your student ID card. We're going to be posting regular videos showing skills and techniques, and we're going to post those to YouTube. So if you get stuck, you can go back on and you can play the videos as often as you want to learn the concepts and the skills to pass this particular module. Now, we do make certain assumptions before you start this module. The first assumption is that you've done some programming of some sort, whether it's Visual Basic or C++ or Java, that you kind of understand the concepts of programming. And the second assumption we make is that you're comfortable with the concept of object-oriented programming. If you haven't done object-oriented programming, it won't stop you from doing this particular module, but you may find it more difficult than if you had. So it's very important that you get up to speed very quickly with this. Now, for this particular module, we're going to move straight on to iOS 7, which came out a couple of weeks ago. So please make sure that if you look at tutorials online, you're looking at extra resources and materials which target iOS 7 because it's very, very different from previous versions of iOS. Now, if you have a device that's running iOS 7, in other words, the new interface, then it means you can test your apps on your phone or your iPad. Okay, but to do that, you need to let us know some information about your device. If you have a device, you can't test it without joining the Apple Developer Program. Now, luckily for you, the university has free access to the developer program. So if you have an iOS device, send me an email as soon as possible and include what's called the UDID number from your phone or your iPad. And that's a unique identifier which allows us to register your device as a development device. Now, to get that UDID number, you need to use an app on your device, something like Udid Sender. And what that does, it grabs the UDID off the device and allows you to email it to whoever you want to email it to. Now, I can't emphasize enough, if you want to develop on your device, it's vitally important that you send this information through as soon as possible so we can set you up with an account. If you haven't got an iOS device running iOS 7, then you don't need to send me any information and you do not need to be a member of the development program. Because all the work we do in this module, you can run and test on the simulator built into the development environment. So you don't need to have an iOS 7 device, but obviously it's a lot nicer to be able to run the applications on the real phone. Now, the development environment we're going to be using is called Xcode, and the latest version is called Xcode 5. And that's the version we need to develop apps for iOS 7. So this is a free download, and you can download it from the Apple Store. It's about a 1.7 gig download, so be aware of that when you start the download process. but then you can install it on your device and start developing straight away. Now, word of warning, Xcode only runs on the Apple platform. You have to have an Apple Mac. And more specifically, it has to have at least a Core 2 Duo processor, which is pretty old nowadays, or an i3, an i5, or an i7 processor. Okay, very important. Anything before that, the latest version will not run. You also need at least 4 gig of RAM. You can run it on 2 gig, but it will be painfully slow. So you really, really need 4 gig to do an effective module. And finally, you need either OS X Mountain Lion operating system or the latest OS X Mavericks. Okay? It will not run on anything previous to Mountain Lion. If you need to buy a Mac for this module, the cheapest entry into this platform is the Mac Mini. And I did a quick check before this session, and with the student discount, it's about £450. So it's not a cheap way of getting into development. If you don't really want to go and buy a Mac, or you haven't got a Mac already, we need to have some facilities for you to do work on the module. And the Lancaster Library has some Macs set up, and they will have the latest version of Xcode installed for you to use. And because there's a limited number of them, we've made an agreement with IT services and the library that if you go in there and you need to work on the Mac to do iOS development, they will give you priority on the machines. Every week, I'm going to give you an exercise to do in the 2-hour lab time you've got. Now, it won't be part of the assessment, but if you don't do those labs, you're not going to be able to cope with doing the assignment at the end. So it's very important that you do work your way through and complete each of the labs. Okay? Because they're going to really reinforce what we've talked about in the lectures, and they're going to sort of help build up your skill set. Anyway, hope you enjoy the rest of the module. Hopefully you'll find it very useful. Now, students who did this module last year, quite a few of them have actually got jobs now doing iOS development. But obviously this is only a start. Okay, once you get to the end of this module, I encourage you to go and find out more and learn new skills and explore the platform more thoroughly, because I can really only give you a taster of what you can do with iOS. If you have any questions or you need more information, then drop me an email and I will do my best to respond to that. Okay, thank you.